I heard someone say that recently if alcohol as a substance was introduced to the human race now, it would not get approval by the FDA because of the health risks associated with it. So it's interesting that we're very protective of our relationship with alcohol. And for women, over the last, I would say over the last 10 years especially, I have really witnessed this mummy wine culture, this normalizing of using alcohol to cope with the demands of being a woman and the demands of being a mum.
Hi, I'm Clare Rowe, and welcome to On the Couch with Clare, the podcast where we are having conversations around topics that, quite frankly, I'm interested in, but I think you are too. And as usual, we're trying to always back it up with a good dose of common sense and science. So today's topic is no different, and I have been thinking about this topic for a long time, possibly 2 years. And to be honest, I'll go through thinking about it in phases, and then I will just push it deep down. It's too confronting, ignore it. I may get to the stage of doing a little Google search around it, and then that's it. I'll ignore it again. So here we go. The topic is alcohol. And many of you may be thinking out there, great, that's fantastic, Claire, because I love a good G&T. Great, let's talk about that. But what I want to talk about today is the concept of where alcohol becomes a problem, particularly for women. And there really is a blurring of lines around particularly mum culture of drinking, of using alcohol in a way that is quite hidden from our friends and families, but it's our little secret to get through the day. So I came across today's guest, who is Sarah Rusbatch, and I thought, this is it. I've got to read her book. I've got to sign up to her 30 days alcohol-free challenge, which I have just completed. So we're going to talk about that. Her book is called Beyond Booze: How to Create a Life You Love Alcohol-Free. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, there's the beautiful book. I love those colors because I can find it on my bookshelf. And we are going to get stuck straight into it about talking to Sarah about not just her own personal journey, but now her mission to help particularly women who are maybe curious about their own drinking habits. She is there judgment-free to hold their hand and start having this conversation. So thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's get straight into it, because what I've been thinking the last couple of years, aside from my own alcohol use, because again, that was just too hard to go there initially, is if you stand back and look at society or conversations around alcohol, and I'm talking about mums predominantly, it's kind of weird. Like if you're an alien landing on Earth, it's a bizarre thing that we do when we meet mums at the school gate, or we jump on the message group and we say, oh, the kids are like, annoying me today, and I haven't started dinner yet, and I've got all this stuff to do, and I'm so stressed and tired. And the response is invariably a lot of the time, all good, it's 1 o'clock soon. Is it 5 p.m.? Ha, 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 ha. And the memes go around, and the, pour a big one tonight, might be a double tonight, jokes. Is that weird? Is this where you came to thinking?
Look, I think if an alien came to land, they would sit there and go, what on earth is going on? What are these humans doing here? I heard someone say that recently if alcohol as a substance was introduced to the human race now, it would not get approval by the FDA because of the health risks associated with it. So it's interesting that we're very protective of our relationship with alcohol. And for women, over the last 10 years especially, I have really witnessed this mummy wine culture, this normalizing of using alcohol to cope with the demands of being a woman and the demands of being a mum. And in every WhatsApp group and Facebook group and everywhere you go, we're doing big alcohol's marketing job for it. We're simply there going, have a wine, it's wine o'clock, everything will be all right, just go and have a wine. But we're not pausing to actually go, is that really the best solution? And I definitely got to the point of realizing that that had sucked me in, that wine culture, but I got to the point where I realized it wasn't the best solution for me.
Yeah, it's when you just said then how protective we are of it. And that's why, like a lot of people and yourself probably, it's taken me quite a while to be able to say, okay, vulnerability, let's just have the conversation. I've got to do it, Claire. Because it's this whole, no, don't take that off me. That's my thing. And because everyone else is doing it, right? And because you get that feedback in the messages, it's like, well, everyone's doing that. That's what you do. But you're right. If it was introduced today, that's astonishing that it wouldn't be approved because, if you're not coping, let's put a poison into our body that we know doesn't have any real benefits at all. What are some of and you outline them in the book, and I found them shocking. What are some of the health benefits? Sorry, not there's a slip up, health benefit. The detriment to our health. You talked about increased rates of cancer. You talked about some really severe, debilitating effects of alcohol use. What are they?
So we know that alcohol directly causes 7 types of cancer, and that's directly. And for women, what we need to be really concerned about is breast cancer. They did a study at University of Melbourne, I think it was last year, where they did a survey and they found only 1 in 5 women are aware that alcohol is a direct causant of breast cancer. And so
I did
there's
not
not
know that. I did not know that, Sarah, before your book.
a lot of people don't, because big alcohol have done a lot to keep information under the radar. So we know that alcohol is the direct cause of 7 types of cancers and indirectly other types of cancer. We know that alcohol has health risks towards dementia and brain health. We know that it causes, obviously, everyone knows cirrhosis of the liver. But what's interesting is most people think that to get liver cirrhosis, you have to be like the stereotypical, what we perceive as the alcoholic, the person that's homeless, that's drinking out of a brown paper bag at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's a liver specialist that was interviewed in the UK, and he had a ward only with people with alcohol cirrhosis of the liver at end stages. He said only 1/3 of them would describe themselves as alcoholics or physically dependent on alcohol. The other 2/3 would describe themselves as social drinkers. And
Wow.
the other thing that's really important that I go into detail in the book is that a woman's body cannot metabolize alcohol in the same way as a man's body. And this is because women have less water content. We just naturally carry more body fat than water. A man will have more water content in their body, which means that a man will dilute more of the alcohol than a woman will. And women produce less of an enzyme called ALDH, alcohol dehydrogenase, which is what helps the body to metabolize, break down, and remove the toxin that is alcohol from the body. Because women produce less of this, it means more alcohol enters our bloodstream, which makes us more vulnerable to the health risks, the liver disease, the cancers, the impact on our heart, the impact on all those health risks. Women are more vulnerable to. So a woman and a man drinking the same amount of alcohol, like by like, more alcohol content will enter the woman's bloodstream. And the thing for women to note is that we have less of this enzyme ALDH anyway. And as we age, the aging body produces even less of it. So this is why so many women find that alcohol impacts them more in their 40s and 50s than it did in their 20s and 30s. And that is simply because as we get older, we're producing less of the enzyme that helps the body break down and effectively remove the poison that is alcohol from the body. And so because we can't effectively break it down as well, we start suffering more impact to our sleep, our anxiety, just feeling worse from alcohol in our 40s and 50s than we did in our 20s and 30s.
I think there's several moments in your book where I had to just put it down and just go, let me think about that for a second. Let me reread that for a second. And one of those was, that direct link to breast cancer. But I've been to many breast cancer foundation fundraisers where we're all sipping on pink bubbles. They're serving it.
It's
Like, is
disgusting.
that
I know. One of
that
the cancer charities in Australia have just launched a rosé wine where it's not even alcohol free. It's an alcoholic rosé where every $2 from a bottle income goes to breast cancer research. And when you're like, hang on a minute, is this not absolutely bonkers? So, according to different studies that you look at, 1 in 5 breast cancer diagnoses is directly caused by alcohol. That's
Wow.
20% of breast cancer
Wow.
diagnoses are caused by alcohol. And if you listen to the Huberman podcast on alcohol, he says 3 or more units of alcohol per week is what starts to increase your chances of alcohol-related breast cancer.
Okay, so from a psychologist's point of view, and I'm fascinated about human behavior and why we do what we do. You know, we've got undoubtedly all these significant risks to our health. And for some reason, we've been able to heed that when it comes to cigarettes. My kids saw someone smoking yesterday and it was like a novelty. They pointed it out. And I realized for a 7-year-old, they don't grow up in the world that I grew up in and saw people in the street smoking. Fantastic. Why is alcohol different?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons. So who knows? Maybe we will go the way of smoking, and maybe over the next 10 to 20 years, that will start to happen. The second thing is that, like you said before, you didn't know about the link between alcohol and breast cancer. A lot is done to cover up this information. The third thing is there is a lot of direct but quite subtle marketing done from the big alcohol companies towards women that is making us believe that we need it as a reward, as a relaxant, to have fun, to relax. It's something we deserve at the end of a day. And I talk about it in my book. It was 30 years ago that the alcohol industry they realized they weren't making enough money from women. So they went, oh, how can we start this whole like entire 50% of the population and not drinking enough alcohol and making us enough money? So how can we get them to drink more of our products? And that's when they started to segment their marketing so that they specifically started targeting women. And I hear that and I talk about this a lot, but still every time I do, it makes my blood boil because it just the carelessness and the disregard for women's health when it comes to going, oh, how can we make sure more women are drinking our products? And it makes me feel like we've just been treated like absolute idiots in some way, like that with no care for our health or anything. And so we live in a world that constantly bombards and promotes alcohol. At the time of us recording this, it's not been long since Mother's Day. And one of the biggest sleepwear stores in Australia launched their Mother's Day campaign with a pair of pajamas covered in wine bottles that says time to wind down. And
Wow.
I just think of all the little girls just getting that message that the only way to relax as a mum, being a mum is so hard that the only way you can relax is by drinking alcohol. And we romanticize alcohol and we dress it up as this wonderful thing that adds to our life. But are we not all just being duped? Like it is a poison, it's a toxin. In 2019, The Lancet put alcohol in the same category as tobacco in terms of being a level 1 carcinogen. So drinking 1 bottle of wine has the same cancer risks for a woman as smoking 10 cigarettes. So we wouldn't give mum a pack of 10 fags for being a mum, but we're happy to give her a bottle of wine, right?
Yeah. And again, human behavior is odd in the sense that you can literally tell people that they're putting their life at risk and drinking poison. And yet sometimes that's not the thing I'm sure you find with clients that actually they come with that's going to make them make the shift. So let's get down to what you've termed in the book gray area drinking. And again, I like how you mentioned that image of the homeless alcoholic, because yes, it is a way to distance ourselves from that. I'm not that person. I'm a fully functioning parent here with a job and a mortgage, and I'm holding it together. So I'm not that person. So, what is gray area drinking?
So historically, what we've done is exactly as you've just said, we've talked about someone's alcohol use as either they're in that dirty, horrible category of they're like an alcoholic whispered, or they're a social drinker. And most people only believe someone's an alcoholic if they are, homeless, they've lost their job, they're all the rest of it. I never defined myself as an alcoholic. So I was a classic grey area drinker. And a way to consider this is a scale of 1 to 10. So One being someone who doesn't drink, maybe has a glass of champagne at a wedding once a year. And 10 being someone who is that physically dependent alcohol user and needs to have medical support to safely withdraw from alcohol, because alcohol is actually one of only 3 substances that the human body can die from withdrawal from. And so we've got a 1 and a 10, but not many people sit at either end. Grey area drinking would be about a 4 to an 8 on that scale. So when we've got to that point where we're no longer a take it or leave it drinker. And what I mean by that is we're no longer someone that, like I've got a friend, for example, we go to a party. She is a take it or leave it drinker. But like, oh, I'm just going to go to the bar. Do you want a drink? I know she drinks cider. Do you want me to get you cider? She'll be like, but she hasn't even thought about it before this point. And then she's gone, no, do I feel like a drink tonight? No, actually, I don't feel like a drink. Like, I was never that person. I was planning my drinks 2 days in advance. I was like planning the hangover the next day. I was excited. I was looking forward to drinking. I got a huge dopamine rush even before I had the drink at the prospect of having the drink.
Well, most of us had already had the drink at home, right?
Well,
before
exactly.
we got into the place, like
exactly.
preloading. Yeah.
Exactly. So we've got to take it or leave it drinker. And so some of the signs that we might be in that grey area is we make rules around our drinking. So people that don't have a problem with alcohol, they don't make rules around their drinking. They're not like, I had so many rules. So I don't drink before 5 o'clock. I don't drink on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I don't drink white wine on an empty stomach. I don't drink at home on my own during the week. I don't drink unless I've already eaten first. But then I would always find a reason to justify breaking the rule. So I'd be like, oh, I know it's Wednesday and I'm not supposed to drink on a Wednesday, but I really am going to be out tonight. So maybe I could have tomorrow's units tonight and then I just won't drink tomorrow. And then that's okay if I have tonight's. Like the chatter and the constant justification that goes on in a grey area drinker's brain is
okay. So that
different.
preoccupation with it, isn't it? That preoccupation with thinking about drinking could be a sign to you, or is a sign, one of the signs that you're in that grey area drinking, because people who aren't, they don't think about alcohol during the day, or when they're not drinking, it's not on their mind.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of the signs. Another sign, and this is just a great one for your listeners to just reflect on right now. If I said to you, right, tomorrow we're all going to do 90 days off alcohol together. Right, we're all just going to do this. We're all pledging. Every single listener who's listening to this episode right now, we're going to start tomorrow and we're going to do 90 days off booze. What's your first thought? Because
what's the feeling, first of all? I'm like, Sarah, you're killing my life. What are you?
And that's it. If there's a fear that comes up there, then you are likely using alcohol for something. Because again, a take it or leave it drinker would be like, yeah, okay, right, we'll do 90 days off. Another sign is we've started to notice that alcohol is impacting us negatively. So some of those signs that I see most typically for women are their anxiety has increased because alcohol causes anxiety. Their sleep is massively disturbed because alcohol really does impact our sleep. Efforts to lose weight. I was the classic. I was having my kale smoothies. I was going to the gym. I was taking all the supplements, but I still could not lose the weight. And it was kind of like, well, there's probably a reason for that, Sarah. So we're noticing the negative impact of alcohol. And we say to ourselves, I'm going to drink less, but we never actually do because we always go back to the reason why we can justify that it's okay. So we're noticing it's taking from us, but our attempts to change go like not fulfilled. So we might I used to be able to do a Feb fast. I could do a dry July, but to me, it was a punishment. It was let's cross the 30 days off. I did it to prove to myself that I didn't have a problem because society says if you have a problem with alcohol, you can't take 30 days off. And then it would get to the 1st of August and it was almost like I was catching up for lost time. My drinking would be quite significant again. So grey area drinkers, they can take a break, but they can't stay at a low level of alcohol. Because I always say once you've passed the point of being a take it or leave it drinker, it's very rare that you will go back to being a take it or leave it drinker because of the neural pathways that have been created in the brain. And we can talk about that in a moment. Just a couple of the other signs would be we often drink more than we intend to. So I'm just going to promise myself I'm just going to have one tonight. And then it pretty much often ends up being more. And we're silently worrying. about our drinking. Like maybe we're at the back of our mind, we are aware of some of the health risks. We are aware of the role modeling that we're doing to our daughters, and it's not sitting that well with us. We're starting to be aware of this, but still our attempts to change. I used to wake up every Monday morning. Oh my God, I'm not drinking this week. Like I've had a big boozy weekend. I'm definitely not drinking this week. I'm going to do a detox. I'm going to have a clear day. Monday and Tuesday, I'd be feeling crap because I was still getting over my hangover from my 3 days of drinking. And then by Wednesday, I'd be like, oh yeah, I knew I was going to have a week off, but like I feel all right now. One won't hurt. And so the cycle continues. And I would have probably one day a week where I was ever fully on my game, showing up as my best self. And the rest of the time, I was never hungover because I had quite a high tolerance for alcohol, but I was always tired. So the background line of my life was, I'm not hungover, I'm just tired.
Yes. Yes. And I think so many women would just say that. I think I was one. And the tolerance can build up to half a bottle of wine quite easily, can't it? And then,
Totally.
yeah, absolutely.
I've got clients who can drink 1.5 bottles
Yeah.
most nights and get up and go to the gym in the morning.
Wow. Okay. So I think, like I said, sometimes it's not the big, you're going to die kind of warnings that push people. It's actually just I'm tired, I'm aging, I can't lose weight, I just feel unfulfilled. I know it's a problem. So it's those things that push people. And I think for me, and why I have been thinking about this for a while and then came across your work, was the internal chatter. It was like this background niggly voice that I just pushed and pushed and pushed to say, no, I don't have a problem. And for me, in my history of alcohol, it was very easy to say that to myself because my mother was a level 10 alcoholic. And she drank at all times of the day and was physically dependent on alcohol. And she died from it 6 years ago. She passed away from it, but she was a level 10. I'm not a level 10. I'm not an alcoholic, and she very much was. And so my history has been yes, but you're not your mother. You're not your mother, so it's okay. And your friends are doing this. And then, like many, many people, COVID came. And everyone's got their COVID story. And many COVID stories I'm now learning are wrapped up in increased alcohol use. My COVID story was a divorce and marriage separation and finding myself alone physically in a house. And my ex-husband wasn't a big drinker. He'd drink out socially. He probably is a take it, leave it drinker. And so I didn't drink, to be honest, a lot at home. Occasionally I'd have a wine and he'd have a Coke at dinner. But then struggling with the end of the marriage and being alone, well, yeah, and in lockdown, it was like, well, I'm going to have a drink because no one's here to judge me for this now. And so yeah, gradually, the rules I really relate to, it was like, well, hang on a second, this is a bit of a slippery slope. So let's just mark in the diary, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, let's not do it. Thursday, oh, but I've got an event on, so let's swap those days. And then as a psychologist, I could say this is bizarre behavior around something that is something you consume. This is not healthy. But I want to know from your clients what their experience is like then in trying to voice that. Because for me, even my friends knowing my personal background and my mother, I would have responses like, if I tried to say, oh, a bit worried I'm drinking too much. Oh, yeah, but we're in lockdown. Everyone's doing it. Okay. Oh, yeah, but yeah, a couple of nights, that's what everyone's doing. One friend said, oh, yeah, but you don't hide it in bags and you're turning up to work. And then you go, oh, okay. So what are your clients' experiences when they try and then voice this internal chatter that's been there for quite a long time out in the open?
And that's the thing about grey area drinkers. On the outside, no one thinks you've got a problem because you don't present. All grey area drinkers are high functioning. So we're often juggling everything. We're running the house, we're working, we're going to the gym, we're doing all the things. And we've built a level of tolerance with alcohol that we don't drink to an amount where we're in bed hungover for the entire day. And so everyone's response when people say it is, and the other thing about grey area drinkers is we surround ourselves with other grey area drinkers, because then we normalize the amount that we're drinking because everyone's drinking the same. And so then you're in a friendship group where a lot of people feel threatened if you suggest that you might change your drinking, because then they feel like, well, oh, I'm going to lose my drinking mate. Or, oh, if she stops, does that mean I have to? And so they then will, give you all of that feedback of, oh, yeah, no, you're fine, it doesn't matter. But what was really interesting for me, Claire, was when in 2021, I launched my business as a grey area drinking coach. And I'd been sober for just coming up to 2 years at that point. And I did an article in Mamma Mia, and I talked about mummy wine culture and grey area drinking. 8,000 women reached out to me within 24 hours. And every single one of them said, you've just told my story.
Wow.
And that showed me that we have got a generation of women. We know that alcohol use disorder in women has increased over 80% in the last 30 years. And alcohol use disorder is described as mild, moderate, and severe. So severe being what we've talked about, the end stage, but mild to moderate alcohol use disorder, it often goes under the radar. Like I've got clients who voice their concerns to their GP, and their GP has just gone, oh, no, you're fine, just cut back a little bit, you'll be all right. It's not easy to cut back. Alcohol is one of the top 5 most addictive substances in the world. I've got a client who was turned away from a rehab facility, a private one that she went to ask for support to withdraw, to stop drinking. And they turned her away because she wasn't drinking enough. And she was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night. And
Wow.
but 2 bottles of wine a night for someone who's built up tolerance is nothing. And they can still get up and go to work and stuff. And so this is why I think my story had such an impact, because for people to hear that's what grey area drinking is. You don't have to have a rock bottom to still have some kind of problematic relationship with alcohol. And it was so helpful for me when I was in the depths of my grey area drinking to hear that, and to know, to give myself permission to say, you don't have to be an alcoholic to decide to stop drinking. You can simply realize it just doesn't work for me anymore. It's making me feel like shit. It's impacting my sleep. I'm not being the mum I want to be. I've lost my mojo, and I want to see what happens if I take a break.
And one of the things I think I've heard you say in the past, which really pushed me over that final line to do this, was if you can't do 30, meaning the 30 days off, if you can't do 30, you need to do 30.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. If it produces that fear and I start thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, I need to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I always say to everyone, like, there are so many benefits to taking a break from alcohol. And we live in a society that just focuses on the negatives, that, oh, it's going to be boring. Oh, never going to be able to go out and have fun again. And I am here to say, like, oh my goodness, my life has just got richer, more fulfilling, more fun, with more deeper, authentic connections since going alcohol free. And for me, I don't want to spend loads of time demonizing alcohol. That's, I don't care what people choose to do with their alcohol. It's up to them. But if people want help and they want to change, then I'm here to say alcohol-free living is freaking amazing. It is not the punishment that we're led to believe that it is.
And I think I love that about your approach in your book. It was very non-judgmental and really enabled people to, those ones who are just curious like myself, to say, well, what would I feel like? Because I can't remember a time since the legal age of drinking, or for many of us before that, where I took 30, 60, 90 days off. So I don't know what my body would do. I don't know what it would feel like. And I'm just curious to get to that point. In your book, you very much emphasize that it's very, very important to try and have people discover the why of why they are in this position where they are reaching for the wine each day or whatever the drink is. And I think you say that there are 3 reasons why women drink. I think if I remember, they're stressed or lonely or bored, stressed, lonely or bored. And if I'm talking about mothers, we're talking about, my goodness, an epidemic of middle-aged women who are stressed, lonely and bored. Is that right? Because that in itself is horrific.
Yeah. So I've got a group of 20,000 women. I did a poll and I said, why do you drink, or why did you drink? And there were 3 responses and 3 responses only. And it was a combination of boredom, stress and loneliness. And
Mm.
alcohol, and I really encourage your listeners to read my book if this interests them. Alcohol causes us to release a neurotransmitter called GABA, which in the short term gives us a strong sense of relaxation. That lasts about 20 minutes. So that's the feeling you get when you have a drink. The problem is that the brain does not cope well with such a huge surge of one type of neurotransmitter. So in response to that surge, the brain responds by giving a big dump of the opposing neurotransmitter, and that causes a higher level of the stress hormone cortisol to start circulating around the body. So by drinking alcohol, we are making ourselves more stressed and increasing our levels of cortisol, but that happens after we've had the initial feeling. So we're often not quite aware of it. So stress is a massive one that people are drinking for. Boredom and loneliness. The majority of the women I'm working with, they are busy, but they are bored. They are unfulfilled. They don't take time for themselves. They are doing all the things for all the people. And as a result of that, they are overwhelmed, frazzled, bored, lonely. They don't get time to have those real, authentic connections with the people that mean the most to them. And, or if they do, it's under the influence of alcohol. And again, I would argue that we don't always show up as our true, authentic self when we're pissed. And this is the work that I do with women when they remove alcohol is let's identify what are the reasons that you drink and let's tackle those reasons so that your need for alcohol becomes less.
Mm. So for me in this journey, in the last 30 days of your program, I think I knew this going into it. I very much resonated in your book when you talked about the cognitive or language we use in our head when we do get home, and sometimes we've opened the fridge before we've put the handbag down of I deserve this because I've run around, I've dropped the kids, I've done the activities, I've done work, I've done 3 loads of washing, I've done, can I not just have a glass of wine? And that image too that you portray so well of the bedtime, bath time, preparing dinner routine is somehow made bearable with the glass of wine in the other hand. I literally could see that image of somehow when I come home from work, and I say that with inverted commas, I come home from work and I clock off. We're not clocking off because we then start the second job, which is, the parenting kicks in, and we're there from 4 p.m. with homework or whatever we're doing. And somehow it's the thing our brain tells us that makes it possible. And that sounds very addictive. I realize a lot of people would be hearing that saying, well, you don't need that. Of course you don't. But it's not so much that I need it, it's the I deserve it kind of mentality. And like you said, if you don't, it's like you're punishing yourself, or it's this I will plow ahead and do all this work, but now I'm going to strip myself of the one thing that makes it slightly pleasurable.
Yeah.
And I suppose you hear a lot of that.
Absolutely. Like alcohol is, we can have a glass of wine whilst we're doing the ironing, unloading the dishwasher, peeling the potatoes, and doing all the things that we're often doing.
Mm.
And we've also had years of conditioning and clever marketing saying to us, alcohol's a reward, you deserve it. And we've also got to remember that alcohol massively lights up the dopamine reward center in the brain. And when we've been consistently drinking for a really long time, many of the people I work with have been drinking for 20, 30 years, the dopamine reward center in the brain, it almost stops getting a reward from other things because alcohol gives it such a big punch of dopamine that we stop getting that reward, that pleasure reward from other things. And this is the problem with alcohol use. And Huberman describes it so brilliantly in his podcast on dopamine, where he says, addiction is a gentle narrowing of the things from which you find pleasure. And
Okay.
and so if we
So just explain that. So what I'm hearing from that is that most people listening to this would have heard of this thing called dopamine and know that it's connected to pleasure, and it's a chemical or a neurotransmitter, a chemical that your brain produces when you do something pleasurable. But if you're having or doing something like drinking a glass of wine that gives you such a flood of dopamine, not only are you going to want to keep doing it, obviously, but then you go and do something that you may have found pleasurable and it's not giving you that much anymore dopamine. So everything seems a little dull then.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And this is what happens. And And this is what's interesting about alcohol, because people's dopamine response to alcohol differs person to person. And Huberman says he could look at a room of young people at a party and he could probably pick the ones that are more likely to go on to develop alcohol use disorder because they're the ones that are getting so lit up by alcohol. So I remember I started drinking at 14. I grew up in the north of England. Like, I freaking loved it. Like, I got so lit up. Whereas some of my friends, like, they would have two or three drinks and they'd be like, oh, I'm tired now. I want to go home. I'm like, oh my God, I'm just getting started. So my brain got massively lit up by alcohol. And that is the case for many grey area drinkers. We get a bigger dopamine hit. So talking about my friend that is a take it or leave it drinker, she doesn't get that dopamine hit. She would say, oh, your alcohol is by chocolate. So she would get that big dopamine hit from chocolate, but she doesn't care about alcohol. So again, a lot of it is wiring of the brain as well. And so what many of my clients find, which is one of the most joyful things when they remove alcohol, the first 30 days is often quite difficult and it can be a day-by-day scenario. But if we get to that 90 days, what starts to happen is they'll be like messaging me, go, oh my God, I feel so happy. The birds are singing and the sun is out and I've just been for a walk and I saw swans on the river. Because we start noticing things that have been under our nose all along, but we just didn't give a shit about before because we were spending most of our time tired, hungover, a little bit anxious, and not feeling quite lit up by anything else because it didn't give quite as big a dopamine hit. So I talk in my book about the difference between dopamine punches and dopamine tickles. And alcohol gives a big punch. So because we get that punch from the alcohol, we stop noticing the tickles. And when we remove the alcohol, all those things that have been right under our nose that used to give us those dopamine tickles, they start to become more aware. And so it's a brilliant part of the process of removing alcohol and finding that true, authentic joy in life.
And I think that's what mums, women in these positions, they want to feel, well, energy is what, I would say, and you would hear all the time, alive. And I think looking at you and the energy you have for life and the vivaciousness, and you look at that and go, I don't feel like that. That's not me. I want some of that. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's move to, if we're, as I said, I'm just going to call it curious about taking a break from alcohol, particularly for those like myself who had never done it in, certainly not for any more than a month. I mean, we might do the dry July and so forth, but for no more than that. I love that in your book, as I said, you talk not only about discovering your why and you provide all that support, and I did a lot of that work. It was about I deserve it. And in the end, I'm actually trying to flip that script to say, no, actually, I deserve not to. Actually,
Exactly.
my body deserves better than this, so I'm trying to use the same line that my brain would say, but use it in a different way. Now, can you explain, and I think I'm just going to use this too to ask about my experience here, because when we give up alcohol, what I wanted to do is wake up on day 3 and say, woo, I feel great. This is fantastic. I needed that. It's like when you go on a diet and you wanted to drop some weight and you need the result in the first week to keep going. I surprisingly didn't struggle too much with cravings, though I do love that you have this little term, the wine witch. I love that. I was like, go me. I'm I'm not struggling too much with that. The first few days I didn't feel too bad. I had for the majority of this month, and I'm only coming out of it now, fatigue. I felt so tired, which was really bloody annoying because I just was like, this is not why I've given it up. I've given it up for the opposite reason. To be honest, it helped with cravings because I was so tired that I didn't feel like drinking. And others I imagine would describe similar things with increased anxiety. So can you explain to me why that happened in a neurological sense? Why are we getting the opposite effect in that month to what we're aiming for?
So let's just take it back a minute. How old were you when you started drinking?
Look, I was underage, under 18, but I would say 15 to 16.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And how
And
old
I'm
are you now?
40. This
Yeah.
year I'm 40.
Okay. So that's 25 years of consuming what is a level 1 carcinogen that's a toxin to the body.
Oh, okay.
And we cannot, the fact that you've been so tired simply shows me how much your body needs to heal, like the damage that has alcohol's been causing. So just to set the context for your listeners, 1 or 2 drinks, even 1 or 2, I'm not talking about a bottle. So 1 or 2 drinks prevents you from getting the cycles of REM sleep that the brain needs in order to be truly restored. There's lots of jobs that happen in your brain while you're sleeping, and they can only happen when you go through your natural human sleep cycles. When we drink alcohol, because alcohol is a sedative, we bypass the REM cycle of sleep and we just go into deep sedation, which is not restorative, true, natural sleep. Every night that you've had 1 or 2 drinks, your brain has not had that truly deep restorative sleep. So if you were to count over 25 years, how
Every
many nights?
night?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
your body cannot go in, your brain doesn't get the sleep it needs any night that you've had alcohol. So while you won't feel hungover, you might feel a little bit 5 out of 10. So can we honestly expect 25 years of drinking for our beautiful body to, on day 3 of removing it, to bounce back?
I'm
It just
impatient. I
can't.
just
I
like
know.
things done.
But I think that it's just a sign of how much your body needs this restorative sleep, because you're finally giving her the chance to repair and restore and nourish yourself with everything that happens while you're sleeping. So it's very common in the first 30 days to feel very, very tired.
Okay.
And that's why I always say to people say, how long do you really need to take off? And I say 30 days is a great place to start. But many people, because most of the women I work with are in their 40s and 50s, so they've been drinking for 20 to 40 years, they need to give it the 90 days to be able to really start to see the benefits that they're going to get. And so if you were to carry on and do 90 days, you would start to see your energy bounce back, your positivity, your anxiety reduce, all of that would start to happen. At the moment, your body's still in withdrawal, it's still in repair. And what so many people don't realize is they don't realize they're feeling 5 out of 10 most days because they've never taken a long enough break from alcohol to know what 9 out of 10 feels like. And so we accept and think that a middle-aged woman is going to just feel tired and a bit shit most of the time. And we kind of just accept that. And I'm here to say it is not inevitable that you have to feel that way. And I'm 48 and I feel like I'm aging backwards, like in terms of my energy, in terms of my skin, in terms of my physical health, all of that, because I get 8-9 hours of restorative sleep. I've got a really brilliant lifestyle now in terms of exercise, daily sunlight, everything that I do for my body now nourishes and supports it. And of course, I still have chocolate and I still do, those kinds of things. But compared to how I was 10 years ago, I would say that my physiological age would be less than what it was 10 years ago.
I just love that message. I just go back and highlight something you said there, because I think it is a message I've given to clients my whole career. And that is, it doesn't have to be that way. Because I've given that message when clients, as a child psychologist, and families come to me and say, yes, but isn't arguing and yelling and chaos and tiredness and not enjoying our kids, isn't that just parenting? And I've given that message to say, no, it doesn't have to be that way. And so you're saying the same thing. And I think that that's a great message across life in so many areas. We shouldn't have to say, oh, well, isn't that just middle-aged? Isn't that just how it is? And no, there's another way to do this. And so the same thing, I understand, can happen with anxiety. That could increase before it really does dramatically decrease.
I tend to find that most people, they see a decrease very quickly in anxiety. Okay. And the people for whom there is more of an increase is usually if they've been drinking in response to unresolved trauma. And that's when I always say, I went into therapy when I quit booze. I didn't even know that I had trauma. It was interesting what we unpacked over those sessions, right? And so it can just be about understanding there might be more that we've been numbing and blocking than that we haven't dealt with. So they say that when we stop drinking, we resort back to having the emotional age that we were when we started drinking, because we simply haven't developed emotional processing skills for the shit that life throws at us, because all we've done is avoid things that happen by numbing ourselves with alcohol. And so we build that toolkit, and it's hard because we're dealing with life, and then suddenly we're having to deal with our feelings and our emotions as well. And this is why for so many people, they find it hard. And that is why I do the challenges that I do with other women, so that you can come into a group and feel supported and held and everything else. And going back to what you were saying about parenting, the thing that I always get in every feedback form that I send out for my alcohol-free challenges, and I say, what have been the benefits that you've had from doing this? And I have between 500 and 700 women usually in every challenge. And I would say over 70% of the responses say, I am so much calmer with my kids. And I've developed new skills to keep myself calm so that there's less yelling in the house. Because when we're tired and a bit anxious, we go from 0 to 100 so quickly. The kids, you know, they don't listen to you. They don't unpack the dishwasher. They leave their dirty towel on the bathroom floor, which all kids do. But when we're feeling like that, we just go straight to 100 and scream. Whereas when we're not feeling like that, and we've had good sleep and we've exercised and we've done things for ourselves, we're able to go, hey, this is your last warning, get that towel off the floor, or that's it, no devices for a week. And we can do it in a different way instead of going straight in, I told you to get your, you know, which just raises the tension in the house so much. And so the thing that so many clients find is that their houses just become so much calmer, which is such a gift as well.
Such a gift to the kids and the rippling effect of that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just finish by talking about some other practical ways, because again, your work I love is so practical. There are things in this book, in the chapters, that have nothing really to do with drinking, that you can go and implement in your life right now. And you very much put an emphasis on putting things in your life if you're going to take alcohol out. And I love that, because you've said, and I can completely see this happening, that people say, right, well, I'll just give up alcohol and I'll just take that out. And it is wired in our brain to be the reward. It is the thing that I was looking forward to at the end of the day. So it will be a punishment if there's nothing put in its place. So talking practically, if someone is going to embark on this for 30 days and they've worked out their why and they've done that inner work and they really understand that dynamic and that habit that they're in, what are some of the things they can do to prep and then do this period without alcohol, in terms of replacing it, adding things into their life that are going to assist them in their chance for success?
Yeah. So I think it's great to join and do it with other people, because we live in a very alcohol-centric society. And so you might be the only one in your friendship group who is doing this, and you can feel very lonely. So going, you know, whether it's my program or one of the others, doing it in a group with other women is super helpful. Asking people for support, something I didn't do. I carried loads of shame that I couldn't moderate my drinking, and I was struggling with it. And I'd got to the point where I wanted to stop. And I felt like I was letting my husband down, and I felt like I was letting my friends down, because I was Sarah the party girl. And so instead of saying, hey, I've noticed a massive increase in my anxiety, my mental health hasn't been that great, I'm just taking a break, I felt embarrassed to say that. So I said, oh, I just want to lose a bit of weight. Now, all that did was open me up to people going, you don't need to lose weight. Oh, gosh, just have vodka and soda. There's no calories in that. You know, everyone was just coming at me with all. And so I didn't get the support initially that I think I probably could have got if I'd been honest and said, even if it's one or two people, but just telling them, you know, this is what I'm doing and this is why. Immerse yourself in the books and podcasts, and in the back pages of my book, I've got so many of the resources that massively help me, the best books, the best podcasts, everything to start rewiring those neural pathways. Experiment with alcohol-free drinks. Lots of people find the saying, keep the ritual, change the ingredient. If you normally have a drink at 5 o'clock on a Friday, have an alcohol-free bubbles instead of having the alcoholic, and see if that works for you. Add in exercise, because that causes us to get natural dopamine, because we will go into a dopamine trough and that can leave us feeling a bit meh. So we want to make sure that we're building dopamine naturally. And 2 ways to do that are exercise and cold water exposure. So I'm a huge fan of cold showers now. You will never see me have a shower without turning it to cold at the end. And that causes us to get a dopamine increase for 6 hours. So it's hard, particularly as we're going into winter.
That's a lot longer than the glass of wine, that dopamine hit too, isn't
Exactly,
it? That's 6 hours versus 20 minutes.
Right. So think carefully about what events you're going to go to and what you're not going to go to, because there are some things that it might just be really not that fun if everybody else's sole purpose and intention in that event is to get pissed and you're not drinking. It can actually just be really boring. And so choose carefully what you want to go to, but make sure you still keep some form of connection in person with your friends. So instead of doing Friday night drinks, maybe it's a Saturday morning walk and breakfast, or, just making sure you're still keeping that connection. And what I say to everyone is how hard it is at the start is not how hard it is forever. But people make the mistake of thinking, oh my God, this is so hard. I can't do this. Sod it. I'm going back to drinking. So they go back to drinking, but going back to drinking is hard too. Because it increases our anxiety, it ruins our sleep. If we wake up in the morning, I used to wake up most mornings and the first thing that I would say to myself was, oh, you're a loser. You said you weren't going to drink last night. And so if that's the first thing that you're saying to yourself in the morning, what kind of self-talk are you going to have for the day? What's your mood going to be like? Whereas if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you say to yourself is, aha, look at you go, girlfriend, you are smashing this. Like, you start to feel more positive, your confidence grows, your energy grows, all of this. And so it's just really, really helpful to get this under your belt and to give it a go. And like I say, don't do it alone. Like, whether it's a program that I run or there's brilliant programs out there and there's the sober community that are so warm and welcoming, don't do it on your own because it can be really hard.
I think that shame cycle is huge. And if you could break out of that, I mean, this impacts and ripples so many areas. And you've just said another one, your self-talk to yourself, and alcohol or not alcohol that day. What does that self-talk set you up with for that day to say you're a loser the first moment you open your eyes? So Sarah, there's so many areas we can talk about, and I think I'm going to have to get you back on because we could go into the effect of menopause, we could go into the effect of relationships. How do we date if we're not drinking? So I would love to have you back on, but I think people, and particularly mums, will look at you and say, yeah, I want a bit of that. Like, I just want to feel like I can get up in the morning and I've got the energy and the zest for life, and she looks so happy and healthy, and that's what I'm missing and that's what I want. So I think this is a great place to start. Beyond Booze is the book.
And I was just going to say, Claire, for all your mums that are listening, even if you don't do it for you, do it for your daughters, because the evidence shows that daughters that grow up with mothers with alcohol use disorder are 4 times more likely to develop it themselves. And showing our daughters healthy stress management tools and techniques, like for our daughter to go to see, oh, I'm feeling really stressed, I'm going to go and run myself a beautiful bath and just sit there for 20 minutes. Monkey see, monkey do. Your kids are watching you all the time. I interviewed someone the other day who said from the age of 2, your child can tell whether the content of your drink is alcoholic or not, and in what circumstance you are more likely to be drinking.
Wow, that blows my mind even as a child psychologist. I mean, that's amazing. So if nothing else, these mothers who give and sacrifice so much, do it for our daughters to break that cycle of learning. I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate it. It's been fantastic, and I can't wait to talk again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. And for any of your listeners, if they want to reach out to me, head to my website, sarahrusbatch.com, or you can find me on Instagram and do get a copy of the book. There's lots of tools and resources in there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving up your valuable time and joining me today on the couch. If today's conversation spoke to you, consider sharing the love and send it to someone you know who needs to hear it. Don't forget you can watch this full episode on my YouTube channel. And if you've enjoyed today's conversation, all I ask is that you hit that subscribe button. It helps us to be able to deliver bigger and better content to you absolutely free of charge. If you've got comments or questions about today's episode, head on over and come hang out on Instagram, where you can follow and contact me. Okay, stay curious, stay connected, and join me next time on the couch. Take care. Okay, for those who've made it this far, just remember, even though I am actually a registered and qualified psychologist, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional individual advice.